Randy Luther Parrish.
And why did your parents name you that?
Well, I don't know about the Randy part. There was several children in the community. Well, one close friend, the Norrises, and he and I are the same age, and they were good friends with the Norrises, and they named Randy Norris and me the same. Of course, Randy's middle name's Dwight, but my middle name's Luther. Luther's after my grandfather on my daddy's side.
Luther's what again?
Luther's the name of my grandfather on my daddy's side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a nickname?
Well, the nickname that Dad gave me was Doodlebug.
And did you have another nickname?
Not as a child growing up in the Parrish family, but in my workplace where we worked for the Coleman Power Board, we also had nicknames, and that nickname was Radar.
Radar. Why did they call you Radar?
It was just they hunted an example or an incident to take place to give you the nickname, and so it had to do with radar equipment, and the reason they gave me that name.
Okay. When and where were you born?
I was born at the Coleman Hospital in Coleman County, Alabama.
Tell me about the house that you grew up in. Like how many rooms, bedrooms? Did you have electricity?
We had electricity when I was born. I don't remember a time not having electricity, but we only had light bulbs and just a very few wall sockets. We did have an old electric refrigerator, no washer and dryer or anything. We did have an electric washing machine as a ringer type, and we had no deep freeze. We had on the back porch was an ice box, which we would buy blocks of ice and put in it. But when I came along, we had electricity at that time, but it was just a very meager amount of lights was a big thing to have.
Did you have indoor plumbing?
Didn't have indoor plumbing until about 64.
What about telephone?
We had a telephone. We did have a telephone as far back as I remember. It was an 8-party line. So 8 houses, 8 families in the community shared the same line. And you had different rings. The Campbells and us, we heard each other's rings. Ours was 1 ring, theirs was 2 rings. And at any time that you picked up the phone, if any of the other 8 families was on the phone, then you could hear the conversation.
That was a party line. Are there any special items in the house that you remember that stick out?
The special item that I guess that we had in our house, of course, was the dinner table and the seating arrangement from the oldest to the youngest around the dinner table.
And you were the youngest?
Yeah. Of course, the kitchen, that was a big area, as far as the, mother's biscuit cabinet and those things that we had in the kitchen. Sink, slop bucket, where we put the scraps to feed the hogs.
Okay. What's your earliest childhood memory?
Earliest childhood memory is I had the measles, and I remember being in the baby bed, and I was in the front bedroom, and everybody was in and out. But I remember that was just really sick, feeling bad. That's probably one of my earliest memories. Either that or I don't know if that was the oldest memory or the memory of being on a quilt under the cotton wagon in the field, and they were picking cotton, and I was just a little baby, and I don't know how old, but I remember being they spreading the quilt and putting me under the cotton wagon, and how miserable I was. But the flies were biting me, and I was crying, and I remember Mother coming and seeing about me, but that was the babysitting,
Did you have family chores, and what'd you do?
Yeah, everybody had chores. Our chores was drawing water on wash day, which wash day was Saturday. Cutting firewood, that was Saturday's job, and milking the cows and feeding the animals, livestock, and so forth. That was our job.
What was your least favorite chore?
Least favorite chore was chopping cotton and corn, hoeing. That was something I really hated to do.
Did you get paid at all?
No, we never. I don't ever remember getting paid. Now me and Dale were allowed to have 10 acres of cotton. Here Arlen let us have his cotton allotment, and we wanted to buy a motorcycle, and so Arlen gave us his cotton allotment because he wasn't going to raise any cotton that year. And so me and Dale planted 10 acres of cotton in this field right here, and so we got the cotton allotment check. It was $800 and something, and we put that in the bank, and then we was going to pick the cotton, and all the money from the cotton was going to be put together, and was going to buy us a motorcycle together. Dale got appendicitis, and it was a severe case. He was at the point of dying, and so they carried him to the hospital, and they would not admit Dale. We didn't have any money to pay down, and so they wouldn't admit Dale in the hospital until, I guess, the $800 was paid, at least that much. And so Daddy had to take the money out of the bank and pay the hospital. They did surgery on Dale and got the appendix out, but there's already in such bad, they was already infected, and so they had to leave it open or go back in there and open it up and let it drain for a few days. So if we hadn't had that cotton allotment, Dale would probably, I figure, would probably have died.
Wow. Well, what was school like when you were a child, and junior and later?
We went to Providence School. They tore Providence. They discontinued school at Providence when I was in the 3rd grade. So that would have been in, let's see, I would have started school in '59, and so that would have been in 1962 that they closed Providence School. So I was in the 3rd grade. I just started the 3rd grade, but that school had it had 2 classrooms. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade was in one room, and 4th, 5th, and 6th was in the other room. And we had shorter school years. We didn't start until sometime in September, and then we would go to school for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then we would get out for what they call cotton picking. So whenever the cotton came in, all the schools discontinued for about 2 weeks because the children wasn't going to be at school anyways, because they'd be in the fields picking cotton. And so the schools just would close down until cotton picking, and then resume to school.
Were you active in school activity or sports?
Basketball, played basketball some, and not much. Dale was active in the pole vaulting, but I never did any of that. But just a little bit of basketball. We didn't have we got a football team my senior year, but I didn't participate in the football team or the baseball.
Did you remember any fads or music or hairstyles or things that culturally from then?
Long sideburns, bell bottoms, panda bear pants, that kind of stuff. You know, the hippie type stuff was to some extent popular.
What were you religious growing up, and if so, tell me about that.
Mother was really trying to teach us about God and about. Her mother was very religious. Her mother quoted lots of Bible, knew lots of Bible. So religion came from our mother's side, which she was a Linderman, but she had married Earwood, which Dad was also a believer. But Mother was the catalyst of bringing us to church and teaching us about God. And I remember, when I was born, Mother was real sick. She wasn't supposed to have had 10 children. And so when she gave birth to me, she was really sick. Even though Juanita and them was there at home, it was very crowded because, first of all, we only had 2 bedrooms. And so Aunt Lydia kept me a lot. And I think she kept some of the other ones when they was babies. But she kept me a lot. I stayed at Aunt Lydia's a lot. And so I would sometimes go to church with Aunt Lydia, which she went to 4th Street, and Mother went to Vinemont. And so if Aunt Lydia wasn't going to church, then I was to go to the house and go with them. Well, one Sunday morning, she sent word for me to come up and get ready and go to church with them because Aunt Lydia was sick. And so I just stayed out in the yard and played. And I seen them go down the road going to church, and I seen them when they came back going home. And of course I didn't want to go to church. I wanted to stay out and play in the yard, play with my trucks and stuff, you know, toys. And so here comes Dale down from the house down to Grandma's, and just beaming with smiling because he knew I was really going to get it because Mama was really mad. And he told me so. He told me to come up because Mama had it waiting for me. And so I went up scared to death. And actually Betty and Myra were scared for me because Mother was so mad. And so Mother starts talking to me, and she's going to give me a whipping right then. But Betty and Myra distracted her. They were doing washing on the back porch, and so they distracted her. And I remember going, leaving out of the, she told me to go outside and think about what I had done. And so I went outside, and we had an old wooden wagon that we'd made, just a little push around, and I was on it and scooting around, and I was thinking about how I really got away with it, you know, how I'd escaped the punishment, you know, and I was just feeling good about it. And so when she took care of the matter with Betty and Myra, she was calmed down, but she was still determined to teach me a lesson, and she did. That was the whipping. Mother gave me several whippings, but that's the only whipping I really remember.
Well, what world events do you remember, and did they have an impact on your family?
So are you waiting? You repeating? Okay. We were poor, so, you know, anything that happened in the stock market, you know, the old song says, you know, newspaper said that Wall Street fell, but we were so poor that we couldn't tell. Well, that's the way we were, you know. I mean, we couldn't have told about economic things. That didn't have much bearing on affecting us. Community events affected us. You know, my earliest memory is one of our neighbors committing suicide, going out at night and killing himself. And that was a very upsetting thing for the community. But the greatest thing that was fearful for and affected everyone especially here in this region, I guess across the United States, was the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I think that would have been around 62, yeah. We all was preparing for it to be the end of the world, and we were told so. And so all the news media and all the things were doom and gloom, and you know, we're going to be annihilated. Huntsville is just north of here. Huntsville would have been a prime target because that's where they created the rockets. What is it? Was it the Saturn rockets? Redstone Arsenal was a prime target, and we're close enough. I mean, we heard even when we was working out in the fields, we could the rocket test would jar the windows and sound like a thunderstorm, you know, here this far away from Redstone Arsenal. So we were very familiar in Redstone with the threat and what would happen. And even in school, we were taught to get under the desk, and we were shown the films about nuclear war and what it would do, and how it would population would be affected. So the scariest time I remember is the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Okay. Tell me about a typical family dinner. Did you eat together, and who did the cooking, and what was your favorite food?
Well, we ate 2 meals a day that we ate together. Breakfast was always ate together. Mother cooked us eggs individually, exactly the way we wanted. If we wanted them scrambled, we got them scrambled. Fried, we got them fried. Poached, we got them poached. Whatever we wanted. And we always had gravy and biscuit on the table. We might have bacon, we might not have bacon. So, but eggs, gravy and biscuit, and jelly, you know, or something else of a fruit or something might be on the table. And the older children were permitted to drink coffee, but the younger children had to drink milk. And we didn't have much tea at all. It was either milk or something like that, milk or water. Dinner was a big meal. Mama would leave the field about an hour or so, and maybe some of the girls, to prepare dinner for us. If we were working in grandmother's fields, grandmother would cook dinner for us, and she had a dinner bell she would ring. But dinner was fried things, okra, whatever was in the season, tomatoes. There again, biscuit and gravy. We would have squash or any of the fruits or anything that was there. And of course, milk was what you drink. We didn't have tea and or water. So supper was everyone for themselves. She would cook upon a cornbread, and so you might have cornbread and milk. Supper was just like, you know, I didn't remember it as being an actual planned meal, just when you could, you know.
What do you think about when you think about your parents or your grandparents? Any stories that you would think people should know?
The only grandparent I knew was my grandmother on my daddy's side. My daddy's mother, she lived to be, I think, about 94 or 97. I don't remember which. But I remember her whistling while she worked in the kitchen. I remember she loved to write letters. She wrote letters to different people. She was really good at writing letters. And I remember her dipping snuff. That was something she loved to do, and she dipped snuff as long as I ever remember. And I remember her long white hair. She would put it up in a bun, but she would let it out, and she would set it in her dresser and comb it with, you know, many strokes with a brush. She loved combing her hair out, fixing it, and putting it back up in a bun. and apple pies. She made the best apple pies and apple turnovers that anyone could eat. Aunt Lydia strove to make the apple pies, and Grandma just delighted into teasing her about not being able to make the apple pies. Aunt Lydia mastered it later, but she couldn't for a long time. But you know, Grandma had apple trees, and she would cut up the apples and put them on cheesecloth or on screens and dry those apples out, and then she would cook those up and can the apples and I don't know what all she did, but that's what her basis for the apple pies is canned, fresh cut apples, fresh dried and cut apples. And
go ahead.
That was all.
When and how did you meet your spouse?
I met Carlene. I had bought a ski boat when I was about 17, and we would all of the friends here in the community, we would go water skiing, and the girl I was dating from Holly Pond broke up with me, and so I didn't have a date, and the others all had dates, and we were going skiing, so they got busy to find me a date. And Carlene had just broken up with her guy that she is actually the star basketball player. He was the same age as me and went to Vineland too. And he was dating her, and he was in college and stuff. And so that was the summer after I graduated, and they had broken up, and Carlene was friends with Sherry, and so Sherry set up a date with me and Carlene, and we went skiing, and that was our first date, a skiing trip on Smith Lake.
How would you describe your spouse, and what do you admire most about her?
She was a Hawaiian. She was born and raised in Hawaii. When she came here, she was 13 years old. And she was so tanned, we actually thought she was black. Her and her sister, we thought they were blacks, or at least something between there. But it was because they was raised in Hawaii. But she was very beautiful, long black hair. She was well blessed in a lot of things, and but she had. She was just, she liked me and I liked her, you know, and she was beautiful, so.
What do you admire most about your wife?
Her honesty. She is one of these women that you didn't have to worry about. Whatever she was doing, she wasn't going to be unfaithful at all. And she was a very good mother. She had the motherly instincts was inside of her. She took very, very good care of the children.
How did you find out you were going to be a parent for the first time?
Well, she knew, and when she went to the doctor, we found out. Of course, our first child was a miscarriage. It was a little boy. He was, let's see, I think he was about 4 months. Mm-hmm. And so they had to do a D&C, and so we knew it was a little boy. So I say we have 3 children, but we in fact have 4 children, because I believe life begins at conception. So we really have 3 boys and 1 girl.
What are your proudest moments as a parent?
Oh, there's so many of them. You know,
just a couple.
We've got some good children, really, really good children. Probably when they graduated school and got into their profession, and that was varied times for all three of them. You know, Jennifer went to college 3 different times before she completed, for various reasons, what she wanted to do, and that's being an RN. Daniel went straight through to college, you know, master's in mathematics, master's in engineering, and Carrie worked for me in the fence business for about 10 years, done a tremendous job, but wasn't what he really loved to do. And so he went to college and trained in doing physical therapy and really worked hard, and he mastered that and got him a job. Had plenty of opportunities when he got out of school to do that. So their accomplishment there, but that's all 3 of them when they graduated school and started their professions, and when they become Christians. You know, those are the 2 things that that I'm more proud of. Of course, who they married is the thing that makes the most to them. I told them choosing their mate is the most important decision they'll make outside of becoming a Christian in their lives.
What is or was your profession or professions, and how did you choose that?
I took electronics in trade school, and so I was leaning toward electrical fields. Of course, to know electronics, you got to know basic electricity first. So our electronics courses in trade school turned out to be basic electricity, and so I didn't pursue that. I pursued other jobs, but when it come available for me getting a job at the Coleman Power Board, my schooling in electricity gave me a foot in the door, and so that actually was where my main profession went.
If you could have any other profession, what would it have been?
I guess what I'm doing, building fences, being a businessman, because that's really one of the most fulfilling things, is having your own business and working and doing things and being known to the community and being known by what you are. You know, you're more prevalent before the community as a businessman. In a small community like this, you know, the word passed around about if you're good, and of course if you're bad. So, you know, you always try to make your jobs good and the experience for your customers good, because they're going to tell everybody that that's going to be something you're going to be known by.
Of all the things you learned from your parents, what do you feel was the most valuable?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm most proud about is being taught about God. I think of the possibilities of going through this life without really knowing the Creator, and that's sort of scary, how that your parents can have such an influence on you, either knowing God or not knowing God. And so I've always felt that we had a real advantage in being introduced to God and being brought up in a Christian home. Not a perfect home by any means and shape, form. We had so many faults and so many wrong sins and stuff. It just like any family, but still at the same time, that Christian base, that Christian principle is something that's very important. A good Christian makes a good citizen, you know, and being a Christian, striving to be like Christ, makes me a better person, a better dad, a better citizen, a better person. I still do wrong things, but when I do wrong, I recognize it and I repent of that, confess it, and And of course, through Jesus Christ, we have the opportunity to have God's total forgiveness and removal of that, you know. And so my mistakes can be erased before God Himself. Now, the consequences of those mistakes are with us. You know, I have to suffer those. But the penalty and the guilt for those things are erased. So that's one of the things that, as far as eternally, I feel we had such a privilege and such a great beginning. Mom and Dad also instilled in us a work ethic, and you know, we didn't appreciate it when we was children, but I think anybody that knows us can see the work ethic and understand, you know, how we were taught, and that's made us successful in the world. If we haven't been successful, it's been because of other failures, not a failure on our work ethics.
What accomplishment or accomplishments are you most proud of?
Raising 3 good children, a Christian family, a business that has a good name, that people will recommend. The thing is, with being a parish, you know, might be said now, don't forget who you are, you know, and the same thing as being a Christian. You know, we should never forget who we are, you know, and so what I do reflects on my parents, you know, and what I do as a Christian reflects on my God.
Last question is, what is the one thing you want most for people to remember about you?
That I was a good person.
All right. Thank you, Randy.